In this video, I'm going to show you how to create and override components in Figma. Let's get started. So to get started, I'm opening up a project that I'm currently working on. This is a messages app that I'm currently designing in Figma. At the top of the page, I have a messages header, followed by an add new button. Then I have a section for contacts, and then beneath that, I'm going to have a section for messages. I'm going to want to create a component for the messages so that way they're easily reused throughout the system. So to begin, I'm going to initially create the master component, the one that every other component is going to follow and reference. So to start with that, I'm going to hit the letter R for rectangle and start by drawing a rectangle on the screen. I'm going to want this rectangle to have a margin of 16 pixels on either side of the screen, so I'm going to adjust and make sure that it is actually the correct width that I would like it to be. Next, I'm going to style it, so I'm going to want the fill to actually be white, and I'm going to include a slight shadow. So under Effects, I'm adding a drop shadow. I'm going to have it slightly in the Y direction, so I'll have it as a +2, but I'm going to increase that blur, and I'm going to change the color of it to a lighter gray. Next, I'm going to add a slight curve radius to this. So this is the beginning of the actual messages component, and now I'm going to work on the internal elements. So I'm going to want to include an image of the user, just like this. So these images are currently 60 by 60, so I'm going to want to include the same size for the component. So I'm going to make a circle, and I'm going to make it 60 by 60. I want the user's profile to have 10 pixels on the top and bottom, and 16 on the side, so I'm going to reduce the size of this actual container by 8 pixels. Next, I'm going to include the name of the user that sent the message, and then the beginnings of the actual message that they sent. So I'm going to click the letter T, and then that allows me to start typing, and so I'm going to just put name for now to indicate the name of the user. And then I'm going to duplicate that, and then I'm going to write message underneath that. I'm going to want both of these elements to be left aligned, so I'm going to grab them, and then under the text alignment area, I'm going to switch it to left aligned. Next, I'm going to want the header of this to have a bit more weight than the actual message. With the name selected, I'm going to change it from regular to bold, and I'm going to bump up the typeface too, so I'll make it 16. Next, I'm going to include a timestamp of when this message was actually sent. So I'm going to duplicate this layer, again make sure the spacing on it is where I want it to be, so I'll make it 16 pixels, and then put in a particular time. So now I have the frame of this component. So I have the area for the profile image, the area for the person's name and the message, and then the time that it was sent. So I'm going to grab all these elements one by one and put it in a group by clicking Command G and then clicking Command R to rename it, and I'm going to call it message. Now I'm going to want to make this into a component, so it's very easy for me to reuse it throughout the system. I'm going to second click and then type create component. When I do, the symbol for this layer actually changes into this symbol, which means that it has been converted into a component. We also see that on this area of the screen, it is actually changed, and I can add a description for this component. If I take this message and I Command C and Command V it, it will create a duplicate of it. When I do, over here it has a different kind of symbol, which means that this is an instance of that component. I'm just going to duplicate this several times. Now if I make a change to this upper component, it will actually affect the other components as well. So if I take this message layer and I move it, it will actually change on all the other components. And that's because these are all references of this master component. This will save a lot of time when you're manipulating your components later on, because in this manner you can make the change once and it'll affect all the other instances of where that component is. Now to make this feel like a real app, we're going to want to put in content here and not just leave it in this kind of wireframe state. So I'm actually going to start by putting in content. So I'm going to type in a name, and then I'll just write a generic message. As you can see, it goes to every single instance, which is to be expected at this point. And I'm also going to replace this circle area with an image, so I downloaded a plugin. And I'm just going to add a portrait to fill in that gap. Now realistically, I don't want all of the content to be the same, so I'm going to create several variations of this component. And if you're coming from Sketch, you're probably expecting to click on a component and then manipulate the content in the left-hand panel. The way Figma handles it is a little bit differently. Instead, you could just tap on the component and then double tap on the actual text layer and manipulate it here. So I'm completing the override on the actual component. So you can easily manipulate all of the text and also the images. So I can again go to my plugin, and with that layer selected, I can choose any kind of background or image that I want. I'll just click portrait again, and then it will manipulate that portrait at that instance level. I'm just going to fill out the rest of this with realistic content. Now we do notice a problem over here with the time indicator. So when we write the word yesterday, there's not enough padding between the text and the border, and that's because with the original master component, I didn't align this properly. So this text layer is left aligned, and so it is always pinned left aligned with 16 pixels to the side. So instead I'm going to make it right aligned. And so instantly when I make it right aligned, then they all follow the proper spacing. I'm also going to want to include a different indicator if the message has actually been read. So if the message has been read, I might change the actual text of the message to be a little bit more dimmed, so the ones that the user has not read stand out a little bit more. So maybe I'll grab the message text and the time text of this particular message, go to the text layer, and instead of it being black, I may change it to a 50% black. And I'll do that with this one as well. So this is a subtle difference that these messages have been read and these ones have not been read yet. An other indicator that we could add is this little green dot to indicate who is online and who is offline. So with this original component, I'm going to go in here and then add a little circle that indicates if the person is online or not. But maybe I don't want every single person to be online right now. So again, I can go into any of the instances and grab that circle and just hide it. So then it looks like there is some varying differentiation between the content. Next, for organizational purposes, I'm just going to organize this master component so then all the other ones are organized. So I'm just going to name all of the layers inside the component so they're more easily recognizable. Now, if I ever want to use this component again in another section of the application, I can always go up here where it says Assets and then tap on it. When I do, it says local components. So I'm going to open up the messages page, and then underneath that is my actual component. So I can always go into here and grab it and then place it wherever I want it to be. So in this way, all your components are organized by what page that they're on and then which artboard that they're on. So that's how I create components in Figma. Please let me know if you have any questions about the topic and subscribe to stay up to date with my latest content. Thanks for watching.